to Thriving Together, Stories from CCEJ, a podcast from the California Conference for Equality and Justice. Our mission is to educate and empower youth and adults to lead change for equity and justice in our communities. I'm Vanessa Chacon. In this episode, you'll hear from two incredible youth leaders, Alyssa and Zachi, who just graduated from our Summer Youth Leadership Institute, or SYLI. SYLI is a 5-week summer program designed to foster leadership, build community, and deepen learning for high school youth. Listen in as they share what brought them to CCEJ, reflect on their experiences at camp, and talk about their favorite moments from summer. Whether you've been to camp before yourself or are just curious about the impact of youth leadership spaces, this episode will leave you inspired. Let's listen.
Hi, my name is Alyssa.
Hi, my name is Zachi.
And we are both high school students.
And we are current graduates of the Summer Youth Leadership Institute at CCEJ this year.
This is Thriving Together, Stories from CCEJ. So our check-in question would be, if you can do anything you wanted to do today, what would you choose to do?
I would choose to go to the gym because I was supposed to this morning, but I didn't. So if I could do anything right now, that's where I would be. What about you?
I'd say I'd go to New York and go to the Empire State Building and just look at the views because I think it's a city that I've always dreamed to go to.
So how did we get to CCEJ? Well, last November, one of our friends from a different high school texted me and she said, hey, you should sign up for this camp. And I've always wanted to go to a leadership camp, so I said, why not? I didn't really know what we were walking into, but I didn't want to go by myself, so I asked Alyssa to go with me, and we got on that bus and headed straight up the mountain.
Yeah, it was going up the mountain. I think you kind of feel prepared, and since they tell you that you're not gonna have your phones, I feel like it's a time where you get to reflect on things about yourself and who you are as a person. So going up there, you kind of get this rush of in your head that you're gonna have no access and just be with nature.
Yeah, so we ended up at Pilgrim Pines. We all had our suitcases outside, everything. We met in the main hall, and they introduced the camp to us, what was CCEJ, which is the California Conference of Equality and Justice. And we kind of just talked about what the organization was. So our first camp was in November, and that is usually the gender justice camp. So we get to talk about different gender topics such as sexual orientation, gender identity, and everything surrounding that, which was kind of new to us since that's not something we talk about in our school lives. So that was a great experience for us.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that mostly stood out to me was when we played the game of life, because it was a game where you're split up into different family scenarios. And there can be any different situation if you're a cisgender, male, gender nonconforming, bisexual. There's many different scenarios that you are put into. But there was one where you are a privileged family, so they have all the freedom to do whatever they want, get education, get married, have children, while the other families are held back from that. They don't have as much privilege or privilege at all to do these types of things in their life.
And while we're at the camp, they explain all of these terms to us as if we've never heard them before, because in a way we have, but we don't actually know what they mean for a lot of people who come to the camp and don't know what a lot of the gender terms mean. So it was really cool to have that explained to us, and then we get to play one of those roles, especially ones that we don't identify with, so we can see the different perspectives that exist in our communities.
Yeah, I think since if you're put into a family where you're not necessarily relate to, it's not something that you identify as, it's really good to put yourself in those people's shoes and see how they would go through their life and see the injustice that they would also face and stuff.
That's our wrap on Gender Justice Camp. It was such a cool experience. I'm so excited to go back this year as a youth leader, but that wasn't enough for us. So we decided to sign up for a racial justice camp that spring. And I was nervous because I know people who went, but I didn't really know what it was about. I never asked, and I didn't want to. I wanted it to be a surprise. But it came around March, and it was snowing at Pilgrim Pines, so that camp got canceled, and it had to be rescheduled to May. And we were like, okay, that's fine. We could do that. So we showed up in May, again, up the mountain, and the big hitting point for us, the game that we played, was called Forced Choices. So they asked us a series of questions, usually relating to racial identity or any other identities that's different from ours, and we had to go to a corner in the room of which identity aligned with what we believed about that question. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it was really insane because we had to be quiet the whole time. Try to avoid eye contact with anybody, make sure you're not looking at any of your friends, and just answer the question. And the hitting point for that was that you get to see how other people answered, who stood under your identity, or who believed the same thing that you did. What were we all thinking at the same time? And then we had to go back in our groups, dialogue groups, and debrief on it, which was very interesting.
Yeah, for me, I think looking at the people who are in your group when they ask questions, it kind of like makes you wonder like why they would be there, but also they're not allowed, or they don't say why they chose it. They just go based off what they think in that moment. But I think if you see someone you know in your group, it makes you question a lot of things. But they also make sure that you're not putting it to heart, because it's just a game where you think right off the bat and your first thought.
The whole racial justice camp and gender justice camp helped us analyze our own biases in society, what privilege means, what it means to us, what prejudice means, what it means to us. And I thought it was very cool to have a new understanding of those terms coming back to school and like coming back to life down the mountain, because now we have like a new look on life and what these words mean to people outside of CCEJ or Building Bridges camp.
Yeah, so racial justice was a very, very different from gender justice. Although there were people that we did know there, I feel like the experience and especially the games that we played were very different from one another. And I think each of the topics that we learned were very important, especially what we're going through in today's world. But moving on to the next thing, after racial justice, we decided to try to be a youth leader. So we signed up for the Summer Youth Leader Internship, and we went through the whole process of signing up and doing the interview, and we got in. And then it was time for the retreat. So I was able to go to the retreat, but Zachi had other
things to be doing, I'm sorry.
Other things to do. But going up for the retreat, it was my third time, so I feel like I already knew how it was going to be. And it was much smaller than regular camp, so you kind of know everybody already. So going into it, you have your goals each day that you set for yourself, and you go into different groups that you would go to in camp, so your dialogue groups, your gender identity groups, your racial affinity groups, all those groups, and you're mostly with different people in each group. Like, there's not two groups that are the same. Every group is different because we all reflect on the things that we go through and the things that we see other groups go through. And I think that is really important, because looking at how other people view your group is important.
Yeah, so I didn't go to the retreat, but when I came back, they kind of summarized it for me, and it really did sound like camp, but since everyone knew what we were there for, it was way more in-depth, and it kind of went into deeper terms rather than just what we learned at camp. So when we came for the next week for SYLI, Summer Youth Leadership Institute, it was the first meeting at the CCEJ office, which this place is really cool. I like it. Everyone here has been to camp at some point, so it kind of felt nice that everyone had that background knowledge, because when we came into dialogue spaces, everyone had the vocabulary that they needed to explain what they were thinking, and I liked it a lot. It's the same perspectives, but they get to talk about different topics or more in depth.
In general, at SYLI, for gender justice, it's about all the isms and all the stereotypes that you see in the world. And for racial justice, it's about the racial identity, so how you would identify yourself, and also putting them both together, just making sure that you're asking people what they identify as and never assuming what you think they identify as. And even if you make that mistake, just apologize, and making sure that you don't focus too much on the problem and just moving on ahead with it.
I like SYLI a lot because we repeat the same lessons at the beginning of class every time. Like, we always go over, even if we feel like we all know it, just that repetition can help us in our own lives go out and be like, hey, I need to step up and let people know this is what we're supposed to be doing. I don't know. I thought it was strange at first that we kept on going over the same things, but that repetition kind of builds that knowledge.
Yeah. What is something that scared you before going to camp and then something that scared you after?
Oh, something that scared me before going to camp was not meeting people who were ready to have the conversations at camp. Because, like, I feel like I knew people who were going, you know, since one of my friends ended up bringing me, but I don't know, I felt like it was such heavy topics that I didn't realize that there were other high schoolers out there who could handle talking about such things, because that's just not how our school is sometimes. So that was one thing that I was scared of going to camp. And then coming back, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to spread the knowledge that I learned, because it's not something that we talk about at school on, like, how do you even, like, bring up the isms in a normal conversation, you know? So that's one thing I'm scared of. Even right now, I want to do something.
For me, something that scared me before was meeting new people, and I think I was afraid of, like, not meeting people that had the same similarities as me and experiences, and also, like, thinking that people were gonna judge me for the experiences that I gone through, and then also if I didn't go through the same experiences as they did, they would judge me for that. But I think CCEJ really helped me with that in the camps. But after what Zachi said, like, trying to advocate for others, and also how would you advocate for others on the daily, because at school I don't really see people who go through tough times like that, but I feel like it's maybe because they don't speak about it. So I feel like it would be hard to try to get people to open up about that.
Yeah, this year I hope Alyssa and I could do something different at our school, even if it's just like one CCEJ presentation, or like help a club incorporate some of our community guidelines. The little things like that, I feel like it could make a difference.
What is something that comforts you when you're scared after all this?
I'm going to sleep.
Going to sleep.
I mean, like, I love talking to my friends and stuff, but like sleep does something different. Like, it restarts my brain. Yeah. What about you?
I think for me it's listening to music, because even when we were on the bus ride back from camp, I was listening to music and sleeping. And I feel like it also helps me reflect on the things I've done in the past, like that weekend, but also just in general. It helps me reflect on, like, the things I've said and how I've moved around in that time. So I think music really helps me. So the next thing that I learned at SYLI was that at the end of each night we have a campfire. And those campfires, at the beginning, we kind of have a remembrance thing. We remember whose land we are on, and it's native land, and we have a moment of silence, which I think is very important, because times change, and it's very important to remember what always was and never forgetting where you are. And also we uplift each other, and we pick one person that you think stood out to you the most and who you kind of related to the most, or who you think did the best in, like, the groups you were in, and who you think was more vulnerable but also just shared the most and made sure everybody around them was, you know, safe.
After coming back from SYLI and the camps, what's the social justice topic that hit you the most? Like, which one are you the most passionate about?
For me, I think it would be the racial groups, and especially right now because of the stuff that's going on with the ICE raids and stuff like that. I think to me it stood out not just because it's happening right now, but I feel like I've always wanted to learn about, like, the immigration stuff and how people are able to just think that they don't belong here. And I think just because they're not from here, they don't belong here. And I think how you identify in one way shouldn't be how you are identified in all other aspects.
One that stood out to me when we came back from camp, after we came back from racial justice camp, it was ableism, because in one of our dialogue groups, someone gave the example, like, how some people, like, use their foot to flush the toilet, but people in wheelchairs have to use their hands. And, like, every time I go to the bathroom, I think about that every single time, just because, like, I've never thought about it before, how people put their duty shoes on the toilet handle, but someone has to use their hands because they're not able to use their foot too. And I don't know, I think ableism was my new go-to to talk about, because that was such a trivial thing to bring up, but now it's like a big deal in my mind now.
Yeah, I think that one is a really good one because it's not just about like how people are different from you, but it's also like how other people view you. And all the other isms are very important, but I think the one that stood out to me was the cisgenderism, because cisgenderism is not the only one. Like, that's not the only way that you can identify. So I think it was very important because people can use that against others, which is never a good thing to do.
Yeah. What about, how have you changed during SYLI? Like, what have we learned here that you're gonna take away?
At SYLI, I think it's communicating with others, because when you're at SYLI, you have to talk to others and come up with ideas when you're in your groups. And just facilitating by yourself and having no help, I think having communication is really good, because having silence in a group can be awkward sometimes. So when you're communicating with others, you have to make sure that it's flowy, and also communicating just outside, like even at school or with new people you meet, it's really important.
One of our community guidelines is make space, take space. So I think SYLI is the best place to practice that, because everyone here can take space, but now we get to rotate and take turns being the loud person in the group or being the leader in the group, which is really interesting to watch, because you can watch people grow over the 5 weeks that we're here, especially like people who are not always ready to be the first person to talk. So I like that a lot while being here.
One thing that I really like about CCEJ is when we're in groups and we're doing like our hand signals and stuff like that. I think it kind of brings the group together, because we all look at each other and like kind of start doing the hand movements, and I think it's really fun. And it's just, I think in my opinion, it's better than talking and saying like quiet down and stuff like that. I think hand movements is very interactive. What is something funny that happened at SYLI, or your favorite moment?
I have a few. I love all of our jokes in our dialogue groups and like our project groups, but my favorite moment was last week when we had the career panel. We met someone very interesting on that panel, and one of our friends was like, okay, we had to add him on LinkedIn. I was like, I don't have a LinkedIn account. And she told me to make one right then and there. I have a LinkedIn account that's 1 week old now. So I thought that was really funny. It's been staring at me this whole week, but I mean, that happened. So yeah, that was my favorite moment.
Okay.
What about you, Alyssa?
For me, every SYLI, when we do our icebreakers, I think it's very fun, because it's not the adults who are facilitating it. It's two youth leaders who are facilitating it, and I think it's fun when you have to come up with it kind of on the spot, and then having to explain it and then go through the game, and then everybody kind of looks at each other. And when you're doing the icebreaker, it's kind of like there's like awkward moments, but at the end, like, you kind of get how it makes people open up, and like laughter starts coming out of everybody, and it kind of, I see how like the word icebreaker is really put into it, because like at the beginning, like everybody's kind of tense still, just arriving, but then at the end, you're comfortable with each other and you're talking with one another now, so like the ice is broken.
I like this place because we have all these icebreakers going on, and we could just take them all back to school with us. Because now I don't have to sit there with an awkward "what's your name" icebreaker.
Yeah, I feel like especially when you're at school, like first days of school, the teachers always make you do icebreakers, and I feel like it's always the same. But when we're at our SYLI and CCEJ, we always try to make sure that the games are different and making sure that they're interactive.
Okay, so at SYLI, throughout the 5-week program, we get into groups that they make for us, our project groups, and then we have to come up with a topic that we want to make our project on, and then we're going to present them on the last day of our institute. So for my group, we're trying to make a newspaper. It's going pretty well so far, but I've never made a newspaper before. It's not gonna look like the New York Times, but we're working on it. It's gonna be cute. It's gonna have pictures and articles that we all wrote, and our topic is a little bit about white supremacy / Christian dominance, because that's what we've been seeing a lot of in the news recently, and we want to be able to talk about it in a way that students our age can understand. Alyssa, what's your group working on?
So for my group, we are doing a zine, and our topic is the school to prison pipeline, which is basically where there's kids from school who, when they graduate, they don't end up on the right path. Some people would say not the right path, and they end up doing bad things, which kind of doesn't help their future at all, and they end up in prison. But there's a lot of schools who aren't helping students try to avoid that problem, especially when there's kids who are asking for help, but the schools just sometimes they see them as criminals or bad kids who aren't able to change, which is not a good thing, because everybody should deserve a second chance and everybody deserves to change. And I think some schools aren't allowing people to change and aren't giving the right resources. What is one of the main ideas for your white supremacy that stood out to you?
One of my group members found this thing called missing white woman syndrome, which I've never heard of it before. It's like when on the news, when people go missing, you'll most likely see the white woman who's missing reported more often than a woman of color or a non-cisgender woman on the news for being missing. It reminded me of like when you walk into those grocery stores or like the milk carton thing, it's always a white person on the wall or on the milk carton. So I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like a cool term for it, because now we get to research examples of this happening on the news and like graphics and statistics. So that one was a new one for me.
Yeah. For me, I think there was someone in my group who drew. We drew on our zine, and it was a kid who was walking on their graduation day, and they were walking across the stage, but the principal, instead of handing them a certificate, they were putting cuffs on them. So it kind of like shows how right after high school, they don't go to college, and it kind of shows that they won't have a future and they're locked up right away. So that also kind of adds on to like when the schools don't give them opportunities and the resources that they need in order to, turn their lives around if they want, or go to college and have futures. So that's the school to prison pipeline.
That's interesting, because the school to prison pipeline, you can see it in a lot of TV shows, but I feel like we don't get to see it too much here in Long Beach, because we're just not, at least at our school, it's not one of those schools that has that pipeline. So it's interesting that you guys are studying something that we don't get to see too much in our community.
I think I was the one who kind of leaned towards that, because again, as Zachi said, it's not something that we see in our school, since it's a very small school. And I think always putting yourself in other people's shoes and kind of being informed and keeping yourself informed about that, I think it was really important, because I had never really heard about that in general. So now that I'm informed about that, it's really important. And I kind of look at other schools and see how they're different and how they're graduating and stuff.
And like treating their students, yeah. All right, all in all, to wrap up our little time together, we've learned a lot at CCEJ. I do intend on being a part of this program for a long time to come. I'm super excited to be a youth leader this fall and in the spring and for my entire, or however long I'm in Long Beach. So yes, I love this program. I appreciate everything that I've learned at the camps, and I can't wait to grow. Are you excited to come back?
Definitely. I think first going into camp, looking at all the youth leaders, I feel like I kind of knew that I wanted to be one of them. And I feel like they really have hard leadership skills, and I've always wanted to really show my leadership side and kind of grow on that. So I think being a while is very important to me, and I am ready to show my leadership skills that I've learned at SYLI at the next camps.
We get to lead dialogue groups, racial affinity groups, gender affinity groups. It's going to be such a cool experience, and I'm excited to see the people who end up coming to the next camp.
And I think it's not just fun and exciting, but it's also like when you're in your groups and you see new faces and new people, you kind of, I think I would see kind of myself like the first time I've been there. So I feel like you're able to share like the experience that you went through for your first time being there and kind of passing it on to the new campers, and just making sure that they are aware that there's a lot of stuff that you can learn and a lot of stuff that you will learn.
Another thing about camp is, like, we're not shy to share. Like, at first you walk in and they're going to be like, oh, you're going to talk about all this stuff together. It's going to be so great. And you're like, so I'm not going to talk. But then you get there and you're in your group and it's like everyone's sharing. So, I mean, might as well. Like, what are they going to do? You know?
Yeah. We're very open and comfortable with each other. Are we ready for a checkout question?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So, if you could transport yourself anywhere in the world, where would you choose to be?
Right now?
Right now in this moment.
You know, I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower, but, like, I'm kind of scared of Paris. Like, I would just, like, spawn on the tower. That's where I would be right now.
Like on the top of the tower?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you going other than New York?
Other than New York, I think a place I've always thought was cool, and also I watched a lot of YouTubers who are from there. I think Australia.
Oh my god.
I think Australia is really interesting to me, and I think I've always wanted to be Australian, or at least have an accent. Okay. I think it's very different, and I would just enjoy being there. Okay. But just not the spiders. I can't do. Okay. Arachnophobia is not.
It's not for the weak.
So, yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening.
That concludes
this week's Thriving Together
stories from
CCEJ.
Thank you to Alyssa and Zachi for sharing their stories. Their stories are a reminder of the power of youth leadership, connection, and community. If you're feeling inspired, we invite you to learn more about CCEJ's youth programs and how you can support the next generation of changemakers. Visit cacej.org/youth-leadership for more programs and training opportunities. CCEJ's podcast is sponsored in part by LA vs. Hate, a coalition of partners led by the LA County Human Relations Commission, who are committed to preventing and ending hate in our communities. Once again, I'm Vanessa Chacon, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to hear more stories of thriving together.